Hello everyone. Am I audible? Am I audible? So just give me a heads up if I'm audible. Yes. Thank you for that and good afternoon. So welcome to our Ecoholics YouTube channel. So today in this live we are going to be discussing about IES 2024 का G2 paper, so General Economics 2 paper. So I'm sure you must be aware of that recently Indian Economic Service ka examination was held, and yesterday we had a discussion for General Economics 1 paper also. So there was a live that was held yesterday. So if you have not looked into that, you can definitely catch it up after this session. Yes. So today we are going to be discussing about General Economics 2, right? So let's wait for few more minutes, right? Maybe 1 or 2 minutes so that we have more people joining us. Yes. So इसमें से out of the people who are the students who are here, so I'm sure some of you would have taken the exam. Some of you would be planning for the next year, or some of you might have a longer time to hit your goal. So it is going to be useful for all of you, right? So generally, whenever there is an examination held, always we have this doubts, right? Paper कैसा था? How the questions are given? How how to answer those questions, right? There is always that dilemma that is going to be there around the examination, right? And people who are already given the exam, for example, I'm sure some of you would have given IES ka 2024 ka exam, so you might be in a dilemma whether I've written the answers well, so was my approach right, correct? So you might have all these doubts. So this session would help you to overcome those doubts, to understand where you stand, right? So I'm sure that this is going to be more helpful for you. Okay, chalo. It's been 4 minutes since the live has started. So let's move on. So the first thing before I start discussing about the question paper, I wanted to understand how did you think the paper was, right? So generally, जब भी हम एक exam ले, it's definitely subjective and it depends on how you have prepared as well. So जो लोग, right, who had prepared well, who had prepared enough, so for them, concepts मुझे पता है, so I've written well, so paper was easy. And on the other hand, if you look at it, people who had not prepared enough, right? Who did not anticipate certain questions, or maybe who did not look into certain chapters and all that, might feel the paper is difficult. Correct? So this is how we say it is easy or difficult. But there is a general view about the paper difficulty. है ना? So there is a general view. Even people who find it difficult there is a difference, right? People who are finding it difficult, they would think थोड़ा सा और prepare कर देती, right? If I would have prepared little more, if I would have put in my efforts little more, I would have easily cleared the paper. इसका मतलब the difficulty is because of lack of preparation, but actually the paper was easy. Correct? That is how we perceive. Correct? So in that case, what do you think? How do you perceive whether the paper was easy or hard? So if you ask me, I'm talking about only GE2 ka paper, right? General Economics 2 ka paper. So if you ask me, so as a faculty here in Ecoholics, and I've seen people over a period of time, I've seen past year questions. So if you ask me GE2 ka paper, so I would say it is on the easier side only, right? It is on the easier side only. Why do I say that? Like मैं क्यों ऐसा बोल रही हूँ? Why I am not telling that it is hard? That's because if you had looked into the questions, be it section A or be it section B or section C, इसमें से the questions were not confusing or it was not asking you complexity of the concepts. The questions are very direct, very simple, and if you know the concepts well, right? If you had learned the concepts well, right? You would have easily written the paper well, right? Because the questions were not mostly based on the application part of your concepts, but the concepts themselves, right? That is how the questions were. And when it comes to numericals, kuch numericals tha, whether there is a scope for numericals in GE2 at first place, correct? That is also something that we should look at. So GE2 में numericals का scope तो था. So if they had to give numericals, they could have given in 1 or 2, 3 chapters of GE2. Definitely there is possibility for the same. But there was no numericals, right? It was all about the theory, right? So if you are someone who had learned the concepts well, and if you know and have this answer writing skill, right? That is very, very important. You could have easily done the paper well. So based on this paper difficulty, if you ask me, the verdict is it is on the easier side, right? For those people who found it hard, think why did you find it hard, right? Why do you think it is hard? Okay. So that is about the paper difficulty. Now we are going to look at how the questions are distributed between different subjects. So G2 में General Economics 2, so you have all these subjects. So economic thought है, concept of national income and accounting, financial markets, theory of employment output, inflation, money and finance, economic growth and development, and of course you have international economics, balance of payments and global institutions. So इसमें से, so if you look at it, section A, section B, section C में how the distribution is there. So more or less, if you look at it, all of these subjects are covered. So some always, whenever students, come to the sessions or whenever they have mentorship calls, ma'am, how do we prepare? So कौन सी subject को I need to be giving more importance, right? Which particular subject or which particular chapter I need to be giving more importance. But if you look at this particular paper, it is more or less, if you look at it, it's been evenly distributed, right? And you can ask me, ma'am, international BOP and global institutions में बहुत सारे questions आ गया. Actually, if you look at it, international economics is one particular part, BOP is one particular part, and global institutions is another part. But all of these three falls under the international economics. But so if you look at it, there is almost even distribution of questions, right? Section A, section B, or section C, correct? So then, from this, what are we understanding? So, एक particular subject को there is no special attention given to particular subject. So you need to be good with all the subjects, but especially when it comes to international, where if it is a strong suit, right, international BOP and global institutions, then that is going to be more advantageous for people who had done international really well, because उसमें से if you look at it, 8 questions. So section A में 2, section B में 3, and section C में 3. So that is definitely going to be very helpful for the people who's good at international, right? So section A में कौन कौन से questions थे, right? So you have one from economic thought and national income and financial markets, theory of employment, and then 2 from international, right? International, BOP, global institutions मिला के. So if you look at this, distinguish between mercantilism and state socialism. So that was from the economic thought. So when you come across this distinguish question, right? So if you look at it, there is couple of questions on the same grounds, right? With respect to this differentiate or distinguish in section A. A question है 1A, which is distinguish between mercantilism and state socialism. And then और एक question है explain how current account in balance of payments is different from capital account. So you have these two different questions, right? These two different questions. But here, if you look at it, the approach, though they are from the distinguish or different wala, group of questions, but the approach for these answers are little different. How? See, when I'm asking you about distinguish about mercantilism and state socialism, I'm going to talk about mercantilism, right? And also state socialism. So I can come up with a tabular column and give mercantilism and then talk about mercantilism uske niche, and state socialism लिख के उसके नीचे I can give the points for the state socialism. So I can do this. But for the another question, right? 1E, explain how current account, right, in balance of payments is different from capital account. उसके लिए क्या कर सकते हैं? उसके लिए you have to highlight the difference. मतलब this is what is capital account, but or conversely, this is what is current account. So that is how you need to make the points, right? That is how you have to be writing. So इसमें section A में how do you start a particular question? So for section A, you need not write a 2 sentence or 3 sentence of introduction. So section A may, since it is for 5 marks, so you can directly talk about the question that is being asked. So you can directly start talking about the difference between the given concepts over there, right? So these are the 2 questions that was based on the differences, but otherwise it was all about explain only. So if you look at uh, first B, explain the concepts of real GDP and nominal GDP. So concept real GDP के बारे में लिखना है, then you have to talk about the nominal GDP. And then there is a question asked, which is better indicator? Which is better indicator? So remember, इसमें भी they have given you marks divided, right? You have 5 marks, but still there is marks division. For example, for first question B, उसमें से concepts of real GDP and nominal GDP alone is for 3 marks, right? And then which is better, the second half of the question, उसके लिए 2 marks. So accordingly, your content should be there. So talk about real GDP and then nominal GDP, and that should be worth of 3 marks. And then you have to talk about which is the better indicator to measure. Remember, यहाँ 2 marks के लिए है, so try to answer why it is better. So let's assume you are talking about real GDP is a better indicator. Then you have to state the reason why it is better. Just answering कि real GDP is better does not stop or does not suffice the answer, because it is for 2 marks. आपको reason भी देना पड़ेगा, right? And then if you go on, the next one is also about a statement given. The origin of Keynesian revolution can be found in the problem of unemployment. Explain. So इस statement को आपको explain करना है. So again there is an explain. So I feel, am I not audible? Is it better now? Is it better or it's still feeble? Okay, maybe I will increase my voice as well. So the fourth question, right? The D, question 1D. So if you look at it again, there is a question on state and explain. इसमें भी state and explain trade creation and trade diversion effects of customs union. So आपको trade creation के बारे में बात करना है, followed by trade diversion, right? These are the two aspects that you are expected to talk about. इसमें तो differentiation की ज़रूरत नहीं है. You need not highlight the points. So trade creation ऐसा है, trade diversion ऐसा है. You need not do a tabular column or you need not highlight the differences because that is not asked. You are expected to state and explain what are they, right? So this is again a very simple and direct question. And of course, 1E though I've already discussed, and then 1F. So if you look at 1F, this is again, what is a derivative market, right? A derivative market, and explain the merits and demerits of the derivative market. So उसमें one thing I want you to concentrate is derivative market क्या है? So do not talk about derivatives here. So generally when we look at the question paper, so जब जल्दी में देखते हैं, चलो मुझे I know about derivatives, so I'll talk about derivatives. No, there is a difference between what is derivatives and derivative market, right? So a market where you are going to trade in these derivatives is a derivative market. So you're not asked to talk about derivatives, but the derivative market. So have that clarity, and then similarly the merits and demerits of the derivative market. So if you look at it, section A में. So I've taken couple of questions, right? So couple of questions from section A, section B, and also the section C. So here, if you look at it, explain how current account in balance of payments is different from capital account, correct? So उसमें से if you're going to look at it, you have current account. So current account deals with what? But capital account deals with something else. So that needs to be highlighted. So like that, you have to be talking in each and every point. So each and every point should be on both current and capital account. So simultaneously, you are highlighting the differences. That is how you need to be approaching this particular answer, because you are talking about current account, how this that is different from capital account. So you talk about current account, but capital account is dealing with the movement of capital in and out the economy, right? So like that, you are expected to jot down the points, right? So current account deals with receipts and payments of cash and non-capital items, but capital account has thoroughly considered the source and application of capital, right? So the key components of current account, yes, you can talk about the key components of current account and also the key components of the capital account. So all these need to be highlighted as a one-liners, right? So that I understand, chalo, A aisa hai, so this is the different. This is how it is different from capital account. So this is how you write the answer when it comes to explain how current account is balance of payments is different from capital account. So this is regarding the derivative market. So derivative market kya hai? So it's a financial marketplace where derivatives like futures and options are traded. So what is the merits and then demerits? So merits kya hai? It enables smooth trading because it's a market. It is going to enable smooth trading. It is going to attract investors due to its luring returns. It creates opportunities for hedging investment options, right? And when it comes to demerits, of course, there is a risk factor involved, there is a time factor, you require expertise to deal with derivative market. It is quite complex in nature. So you have to talk about derivative market. Merits के बारे में यहाँ तो I have given it as just the pointers. Of course, you are expected to explain them, right? What do you mean by enabling smooth trading? So what is the risk you're talking about? What is the time factor you're talking about, right? इसको explain करना पड़ेगा. Remember, 5 marks का question है, so it should be worth it. And there is a said word limit given to you, and you have to ensure that you abide by the word limit, right? So remember, word limit or time limit is very, very important when you are taking up the answers. So section A में ज़्यादा time नहीं लगेगा, but as and when you progress with respect to section B, section C, obviously there is going to be lot of time that will go into writing. So you should definitely have a check on both the word limit and the time limit, right? Both the word limit and the time limit. So how do you approach for section B का questions, right? Section B के लिए क्या करना है? So always remember section B or section C, दोनों, you have to start with a proper introduction, right? Introduction and conclusion is definitely important for section B or section C, right? Without any second thoughts, there needs to be a proper introduction given and a conclusion given, because it is a 15 and 20 mark questions respectively from section B and section C, correct? And one way to deal with it, right? I will tell you. So let's take this particular question, right? So section B में question number 4, which is asking you about the similarities and differences between the Fisherian and Cambridge versions of the QTM, quantity theory of money. So इसमें क्या कर सकते हैं? How do I approach this particular answer? So question तो similarities के बारे में पूछा है और differences के बारे में पूछा है. So shall I go on starting or with the similarities or the differences, or what should I do? So basically you have to start with giving an introduction about the theories, right? 15 marks का question है. पहले आप ए क्वांटिटी थ्योरी ऑफ मनी फिशेरियन वर्शन क्या है और कैम्ब्रिज का वर्शन क्या है, पहले वो बता दो. सो फर्स्ट गिव एन इंट्रोडक्शन अबाउट दैट. आफ्टर यू गिव द इंट्रोडक्शन अबाउट द थियोरीज, उसके बाद you can talk about the similarities between these, right? So they lead to the same conclusion, they have a similar equations. So ये similarities को आपको explain करना पड़ेगा. क्या conclusion, why do you say they lead to the same or similar conclusions? क्या conclusions दे रहे हैं वो, right? So you're talking about the direct proportionality, inverse proportionality, right? So you are going to give those in detail. फिर similar equations. So पहले similarities cover कर रहे हैं, right? You have to be explaining them in detail. Then you talk about the differences. So differences क्या है? So when it comes to Fisher, it is based on the supply of money. Cambridge is looking from the demand for money perspective, and Fisher is looking at the transaction velocity. And when it comes to Cambridge, it's about income velocity, the cash balance, right? And Fisher looks at the money with a function of medium of exchange, but when it comes to Cambridge, it is about the store of value. So ये differences है. So पहले introduction, फिर similarities के बारे में discuss करना. Remember, you need to be discussing about it, right? So remember, it's a 15 marks question, so it's 7 plus 8. So इसका मतलब you have to be talking about the similarities in detail, फिर differences भी in detail, right? So here I have given you the pointers. So इसको elaborate करके आपको लिखना पड़ेगा, right? So when I'm talking about similarities, so Fisher says about what, and then Cambridge. So there is a similar approach, similar equations. When it comes to differences, okay, Fisher is about relying on the supply of money, and then when it comes to Cambridge, it is from the perspective of demand for money. So उसको elaborate करके लिखना है. So once you finish the differences, right? Once you finish the differences, you are expected to give a conclusion, right? So remember, when you're talking about conclusions can be of different ways. So for example, when you're talking about a theory, so theory है या कुछ माइक्रो इकोनॉमिक का कुछ क्वेश्चन है या मैक्रो इकोनॉमिक का कुछ theory का क्वेश्चन है, right? So when you're talking about the theories, the conclusion need not necessarily be about a way forward, right? आगे क्या कर सकते हैं? So you can't write anything about way forward when it comes to the theories, correct? So then give the crux of it in the conclusion, but remember conclusion में summary मत लिखना, फिर से इस points को repeat मत करना, right? You are not expected to rewrite the same points. So it is waste of your time, waste of your effort, waste of the word limit and everything when you're going to rewrite the same points in your conclusion, right? So always remember, write the crux of it, do not rewrite the same points. So similarity, so these are the above mentioned are the similarities and differences. Do not write something like that. But your job becomes easier when it's about a different question. For example, when you're talking about any challenges, right? These are the challenges associated. For example, there was a question on MNC, right? In section C, when we are dealing with it, I'll let you know. So section C में ऐसा question था regarding the MNC, right? So MNC, what are the problems that is associated with the MNC? So of course, you can be talking about all the negative aspects of multinational corporations for the Indian economy, right? But at the same time, you can talk about way forward. Conclusion में way forward लिख सकते हैं because there is scope for it. Correct? Because ये सब problems है, but in spite of it, this can be done. Such certain measures can be taken in order to make it better, right? Improve. So you can suggest some measures. So way forward can be written in such circumstances. So that makes it easy for you to write a conclusion over there, right? So this conclusions which would be appropriate and where you need to be writing that is very, very important. I'll give you a trick. Okay, whenever you come across this section B, section C ka question, so I am sure you would have had this time distribution, right? Section A के लिए I will be dedicating half an hour, and then section B, section C मिला के 2.5 hours है मेरे पास. So I will try to give. So इसमें से I have to be focusing on 6 questions, right? Section B में 6 questions लिखना है. So for each of this, I would be dedicating, let's assume, 10 minutes, right? 10 minutes या 13 minutes for each of this because 6 questions लिखना है. So this itself, if I'm going to dedicate 10 minutes, it is going to be somewhere around 1 hour. So instead of 1 hour, I can dedicate somewhere around 1 hour 15 minutes, right? If I plan it like that. So in that case, how do I approach this? So this 12 minutes or 13 minutes, whatever you are deciding for one particular question, pehle, after reading the question, right? After reading the question, try to understand what is being questioned. Okay? So up is IES G2 ka paper, so it is direct. So sometimes there would be statements given, and then you are asked to do a particular question they would have asked. There might be some confusion. So to avoid all that, just read the question twice and try to understand. So इस question में क्या पूछा है? Similarities or differences के बारे में ही पूछा है. So that is your body of the answer, right? So that is your body of the answer. So now dedicate 20 to 30 seconds to just have a quick recap of what can be written. So introduction लिखना है. So introduction में क्या लिख सकती हूँ? So then similarities के लिए कौन से points हैं? And then differences के लिए कौन से points हैं? Then my conclusion could be on this grounds. So if you're going to dedicate this 30 seconds initially, right? Less than 30 seconds initially, then you will not be stopping in between when you're actually writing the answer. Because we always have this, right? So पहले क्वेश्चन पढ़ के चलो मुझे ये आता है सो यू स्टार्ट राइटिंग एंड देन इन बिटवीन यू गेट स्टक नेक्स्ट कौन सी पॉइंट लिखूं सो शुड आई टॉक अबाउट सिमिलैरिटीज पहले या डिफरेंसेस पहले सिमिलैरिटीज में कौन से पॉइंट लिखूं पहले सो ये या वो so instead of having all that confusion just dedicate 30 seconds at the start at the beginning of that particular answer have this. So this is your flow of answer. Flow of answer is very very important. So इसमें तो आप similarities लिखने के बाद you can't give an introduction about the quantity theory of money of Fisher's approach या Cambridge version. So it doesn't make sense. So it is all not right. The flow is not right. Correct? So coming up with the flow of the answer, deciding on the flow of the answer and sticking to it is very, very important. So ऐसे भी let's assume there is a question asked on Heckscher-Ohlin theory, right? So of course there is a question asked on Stolper-Samuelson. So we will in section C, right? So if you're talking about Stolper-Samuelson theorem, so you cannot directly talk about the theorem, है ना? Because it's a 20-mark question, so you have to give an introduction about the theorem, and then you have to talk about the assumptions, right? And then you have to actually talk about the theorem, and if there is any diagram that is there, you have to give the diagram, and if there is any criticisms that is there with the particular theory. So because whatever theory you talk about, be it micro, macro, international or public finance, कुछ भी theory है, उसके लिए criticisms होगा ही. Correct. So if you had to include the criticisms, so there should be a flow in this. So पहले you can't talk about the theory, फिर assumptions के बारे में लिख के, then you talk about the criticisms, then you explain the theory. It should not be the case, right? There should be a flow in the answer. So I am writing everything in the paper, but I'm expecting very good marks, but I'm not following a flow. No, you will not be able to get very good marks if you're not following the exact flow. So पहले introduction, फिर assumptions, explanation of the theory along with the diagram, and then the criticisms and then the conclusion, right? So the flow of the answer is important. So that 30 seconds is worth it if you are, doing that flow of the answer before you pen down your thoughts, right? So इसके लिए obviously you have to be practicing lot of answer writing. So आपको बहुत practice करना पड़ेगा. So you have to be looking into different types of questions, and for all these questions, how can you plan the answers? So practice makes it more effective, right? So अब तक क्या किए? So we have discussed about something called as flow of the answer, word limit, time limit, right? Time limit is also important. So let's assume you're talking about this particular question and आपको बहुत सारे points आता है. So you're sitting and writing. So I'm sure you are aware that आपको booklet देंगे and you have to stick to that particular space only. You can't write more than that. You can't ask for an extra sheet and all. Correct? So you have to be sticking to that. So for all this, your answer writing skill, your practicing answer writing is very important. So much ahead before you practice lot and then ensure that you write in that particular sheet. So if you look at it, people who are from Ecoholics would must be very aware of it, that even our weekly test or सब कुछ उसी sheet में ही you are asked to write, and you are asked to have maintained the word limit, and also, right, you're asked to maintain the time limits as well, right? So especially when you are leading the word limit, obvious when you are exceeding the word limit, your evaluator would have definitely informed you, please check on your word limit. You have written good, but it should not exceed the word limit, है ना? So word limit is important and time limit simultaneously is important, because when you're writing really good but you're taking, let's assume, 20 minutes for एक question के लिए, section B में एक question के लिए 20 minutes you are taking, think about it, for section B itself you will take somewhere around 80 to 90 minutes, 1.5 hour हो गया. section A और section C बाकी टाइम में कैसे फिनिश कर पाएंगे आप, right? So everything, so it is a mixture of everything, giving a precise answer in the prescribed word limit and also ensuring that you don't miss out on points, you're not exceeding the time limits, ensuring that you have proper time for all the sections, right? All of this must be taken care of. And all of this will come by practice. So आज मैं ये सब बोल रही हूँ, कल आप जाके एग्जाम ले सकते हैं. So go take the exam because you have heard all this. So tomorrow you'll go and take the exam. No, that will not be possible, right? You have just heard all this. You have not practiced any of this. Then obviously it's going to be quite difficult to take up the exam directly. So for which you have to do the answer writing, which is very, very important. So section B में दूसरे question. So yeah, I took this question specifically because इसमें what are the major objectives of IMF? Correct? Do you agree that the IMF has succeeded in addressing global financial problems? So इसमें तो आपकी opinion पूछा है, right? आपके opinion पूछा है. So first half it is about a static part. Major objectives of IMF. So आपको IMF के बारे में पता है. So you have to give an introduction about the IMF, right? Once you give the introduction about the IMF, then you have to talk about the major objectives. So ये सब major objectives है. So international monetary cooperation, ensuring the stability in foreign exchange rates, eliminating exchange control, promoting the international trade, promoting investment of capital in backward and underdeveloped countries, eliminating or reducing the disequilibrium in balance of payments. ये सब major objectives है, इसको explain करना पड़ेगा. Again, I've given you the pointers. इसको एक्सप्लेन करके लिखना पड़ेगा. सो ये हो गया, राइट. दिस इज फॉर 7 मार्क्स. 7 + 8, दिस इज फॉर 7 मार्क्स हो गया. सो बाकी 8 के लिए there is a question asked about your opinion. Do you agree that the IMF has succeeded in addressing global financial problems? Right? आपको पता है क्या global financial problems currently क्या चल रहा है? Or you must have known, right? And whether IMF is doing its, you know, bit in addressing these issues, whether it is succeeded or whether it is taking any initiatives or no, it has not. So the answer for this is up to you. You can agree or disagree. But whatever you do, आप agree कर रहे हैं, so then you have to be giving the reasons for why are you agreeing. When you're disagreeing to this, no, I don't agree, then you have to state reasons why you don't. Because 8 marks is not just for agreeing or disagreeing, but to give the proof for your agreement and disagreement. So इसलिए मैं agree कर रही हूँ. So these are the steps taken by the IMF, and I am sure this is going to be helpful in addressing the global financial problems. And what are those steps taken? Talk about them, if the policies and everything. And if you think no, IMF is not doing its bit, IMF is not will not be able to succeed in addressing the global financial problems, then give the reasons for the same. Giving the reasons is what is more important, just not giving your agreement and disagreement, right? So when I am agreeing to it, so I have given these two answers here. You're not expected to talk about both agree and disagree, okay? So if you are a person who's taking a neutral stand, then you can talk about both the points, but generally take one side, right? Take I agree, then talk about it, and I don't agree, talk about it. So people who agree, you can talk about the points on the left hand side of the table, right? No, then the right hand side of the table. So yes, so if you look at it recently, so I am sure IMF has certain publications, right? So in the latest Global Financial Stability Report of 2024, it has definitely addressed, it has talked about this global financial problems. It has come up with certain policies. It has asked how to manage the risk and having a supervisory and regulatory approach. It has also taken policies regarding the cyber incidents and all those factors, which is pertaining to the global financial problems, right? So if you had gone through the report, or if you had just got the crux of it, all these points is something that you would have had with you, then you can talk about it. But on the other hand, you would have also known, right, learnt about major challenges that is associated with the IMF, right, or the criticisms that is uh, leveled up against the IMF. You would have learnt that also. So you think that yes, ये criticisms है, so इसके हिसाब से IMF cannot succeed in addressing the global financial problem. So if you are thinking like that, then you can talk about the loans, right? The conditions of loans, matlab the loans that is being granted to the underdeveloping countries and developing countries, what are the problems they are actually facing because of these loans. And there is also a lot of criticisms that is leveled against the neoliberalism, the new liberalism, and also the free market criticisms. So there is also lack of transparency, and it is lopsided. It is not looking into the betterment of all the members of the IMF equally. So all these are the criticisms. So if you think you don't agree, and you think these, I have to talk about these points, you can talk about this, right? But whether you agree or disagree, there should be a proper reasoning for that. Okay? I like IMF, so I agree. No, that should not be the case. You have to give the reasons. There should be proper agreeable reasons for why do you think the IMF can succeed, right? So this is something that you need to be very careful of. So इसमें क्या फ्लो है? कुछ नहीं, इंट्रोडक्शन है, मेजर ऑब्जेक्टिव्स के बारे में लिख रहे हैं. सो आप अग्री कर रहे हो, अग्री क्यों कर रहे हैं? So you are giving the pointers, and under the pointers you are explaining why you are agreeing. Simple. And the other way around, I am not agreeing, so you are not agreeing to it. Why? Again explain on all these different heads. Got it? So since I was talking about global financial stability report, So इसमें if you look at it, IMF तो static part है. So you would have discussed about IMF, you have learned about objectives, functions of IMF, and then the structure of the IMF, and then you would have also discussed about the different um, IMF और India, challenges related, criticisms ये सब. But इस question के लिए you would have also learnt about the current affairs part of IMF, right? So जब IMF हम करते हैं, so साथ साथ हम ये भी करते हैं कि recent reports क्या है, what are the reports based upon, the crux of the reports, ये तो current affairs है. So इस question में आप static part से you are also interconnecting. So you're also understanding the current affairs and उस current affairs से you are trying to address this particular question, right? So एक तरफ static part है, एक तरफ dynamic part है. So for this question you are required to give a mixed answer. So first static part के बारे में you have to write, and then the next one is actually a current affairs part. So if you would have gone through the report recently, so you would have known chalo ye sab kar rahe hain. So these are the steps that's been taken, correct? So this is how where your current affairs also comes into the picture. So your current affairs is also important, and you should be understanding where and how can you bring them in, because in such questions it is very much possible. Of course जब theories कर रहे हैं, so previous question जब theories के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं, so यहाँ तो quantity theory of money इनका versions, यहाँ तो आप current affairs link नहीं कर सकते, but यहाँ कर सकते हैं, right? So if you are agreeing, so you can also give a conclusion, yes, so this is what it is. Hopefully, it is going to be better. So in the upcoming years, let's think the global financial problems is definitely overcome. Or if you're not agreeing, so these are not conducive. So IMF can do better. IMF can work on it, work on certain aspects. You can give or suggest some measures for the same. So that could be your conclusion, right? Your way forward. So either the way, you are going to give a conclusion, right? So section C. So section C में मैंने ये question लिया कि human poverty index and also with respect to physical quality life index. So इसमें से, so though you are asked to talk about the different, how this is different from PQLI, ये तो 20 mark का question है, right? So the same thing when it was asked with respect to section A, हम तो differences highlight कर रहे थे, right? But for this, just highlighting the differences is not sufficient. So you have to give a proper introduction about what is HPI. Pehle, what is human poverty index? Because it's a 20 mark question, right? So I'll always tell this to my students कि whenever you are taking up a section B or section C, think like you are explaining a particular concept to your friend. So आपको when you're talking to your friend or you're explaining this to your friend and the last day of the exam, just before or few hours before the exam, so what will you say? So you give him a crux of everything, because when I'm talking just about the differences, he or she will ask me पहले क्या है HPI क्या है, what is this PQLI, right? That is how they would question us, correct? So we'll give them what is HPI, फिर what is PQLI, then we talk about major or important factors associated with the HPI and PQLI, फिर हम differences के बारे में explain करेंगे. So it's that your friend does not know anything, so you are explaining him from the scratch, but it should also be precise. It should not go on and on. You can't sit and take him a 1 hour session right now on HPI and PQLA. It should be precise. It should be very short and crisp. So that's what you're doing. Think your evaluator is a friend, right? That's what you're expected to do. So you are going to explain him right from the beginning, giving a proper introduction about all of this and also highlighting the differences. But at the same time, you're not going on and on. You're trying to be short. You're trying to ensure that it is worth of the 20 marks, the prescribed word limit and the time limit, right? So इसमें तो introduction. So HPI, importantly, HPI and PQLI highlight the factors. So for HPI, it is about life expectancy at birth, adult literacy, and access to basic amenities like clean water and adequate nutrition. But when it comes to PQLI, of course, life expectancy है, but यहाँ क्या है, infant mortality rate is taken into account, and of course, literacy is there. So this difference, this itself is a difference, right? So this itself is a difference. So you are expected to give the factors very clearly what HPI is calculating or it's measuring, and when it comes to PQLI, what it is. And then points of difference को highlight करके, so scope of measurement में there is a difference. The purpose of why you are coming up with the HPI and PQLI, there is a difference, highlight that, and application part में भी difference है. So इसको आप explain करना पड़ेगा elaborately, right? So this is what you are expected to do. Nothing more, nothing less. And the last one, if you're going to look at it, the section C में, question number 15. So I was telling you about this. Critically examine the role of multinational corporations in global economic development. So it is not pertaining to India. So in general, they are talking about the global economic development. So क्या हो रहा है? So critically examine the role. So whenever you come across this, critically examine the role, how do you approach? If the question was just examine the role of multinational corporations, how do you answer? And when it comes to critically examine, how do you answer? There is a whole lot of difference in approach for both the questions, right? So pehle introduction about MNC. Again, it's a 20 marker. Evaluator is your friend. You have to start from the basics, but you have to keep it precise. So talk about MNC, right? And then whenever there is a question on examine the role. So examine the role matlab you are being an examiner. You are going to be having a neutral perception. You're going to look at the positive aspects. You're also going to look at the negative aspects. So you're going to talk about the positive aspects of MNC, what and all it is going to help us with. So definitely if you take MNCs play a very positive role, especially in the developing economy in terms of creating employment opportunities, technology transfer, expertise, and so on and so forth, right? So वो सब positive aspects है, but इसमें negative aspects भी है, right? Negative aspects भी है, जैसे domestic capital, threat to domestic industries, exploitation of labor, pollution, cultural homogenization, economic instability. So you have all this on the other end. So you're going to take a neutral role and do this. But when it comes to critically examine, when I'm talking about critically examine, which means now I am not a neutral person, but I'm a critic. Critic ka matlab, I understand the positive aspects, right? But at the same time, I am focusing more on the negative aspects, right? I'm focusing more on the negative aspects. I wanted to highlight ये सब ठीक है, but you are doing this a mistake. So that is what is a critic, right? So critically examine. So remember, critically examine का मतलब ये नहीं कि you talk only about criticisms. That is again a very wrong approach. So critic will never overlook the positive aspects. A critic will consider the positive aspects, but he would be concentrating more on the negative aspects. So you being a critic, you have to start with the positive aspects, right? You have to start with the positive aspects of the multinational corporations, of what positive role does it play. And then, in spite of all this, there are a whole lot of negative impacts that it definitely have on global economic development. And then you have to talk about points like this and you have to elaborate those points. So remember, ये जो कुछ भी पॉजिटिव एस्पेक्ट्स आप स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं, सो वो 4 एस्पेक्ट्स या 5 एस्पेक्ट्स आप लिख सकते हैं, या यू कैन राइट इट लाइक अ पैराग्राफ. यू कैन पुट टुगेदर ऑल द पॉजिटिव एस्पेक्ट्स, maybe in 4 to 5 sentences you can have a paragraph and then talk about this negative aspects. So remember, critically examine में only criticisms should not be concentrated. Okay, there should be more weightage given from that end, but it doesn't mean that you overlook the positive aspects. So critic will never overlook the positive aspects. Okay, so that is something that you must be aware of. So examine, critically examine, that is the difference. But दोनों में you talk about positive and negative, but The weightage given for critically examine, I mean the weightage given for negative aspects and critically examine is little higher. Got it? So these are the major, questions that I've taken, which requires. Otherwise, if you look at the other questions, so just like in section A, you have in section B also direct questions, right? What is national income? Why is measurement of national income done? What changes brought to the basic equation? What are the similarities and differences we have seen? State and explain the components of equity market. Explain the non-tariff barriers to trade. What are their implications on international trade? Explain how Caldo's model of economic growth has solved the problem of discrepancy between warranted rate and natural rate of growth. State and explain the foreign trade multiplier. So if you look at all these questions, these are more direct, right? इसमें तो introduction लिख के body and then conclusion, right? And most of them, if you look at it, most of them are conceptual based and then theory based. उसमें current affairs कहाँ link कर सकते हैं? So in the IMF you can do that. So that is why I've discussed that particular question. And section C में what is green national income? How is it computed? So explain why green national income is accounting is essential for sustainable human development. State and explain Stolper-Samuelson theorem. What are its implications on a labor-abundant country? So this is about the Stolper-Samuelson theorem. So आपको introduction देना है. You have to talk about the Stolper-Samuelson theorem. पर इसमें क्या है ना? आपको 10 and 10 marks is being divided. So for the theory, it's 10 marks and the implications. So with the Stolper-Samuelson theorem, what are the implications on specifically the labor-abundant country? Labor-abundant country. So when we are doing the Stolper-Samuelson theorem, we talk about both the countries, right? But yaha, you are expected to highlight for the labor-abundant country. So then there was a question on disequilibrium in the balance of payments, right? So what is disequilibrium in balance of payments? And elucidate the monetary and non-monetary measures. Monetary and non-monetary measures to correct the disequilibrium. So you have good number of measures, right? You have trade policy measures, you have expenditure, reducing expenditure switching, correct? Apart from that, you have a direct control. So in expenditure switching policy only you talk about the approaches, right? Marshall-Lerner condition, income absorption approach and all that. So you can talk about both monetary and non-monetary measures. You can keep it precise. So next question to 14th we have discussed, 15th bhi ho gaya. So last question is regarding the inflation. Differentiate between demand pull inflation and cost push inflation. So आपको differentiate मतलब again you have to talk about demand pull inflation and cost push inflation. You can come up with a tabular column where you talk about demand pull inflation on different aspects and so on cost push inflation. Once you do that, describe in detail their causes and impact on the economy and suggest appropriate policy measures to control inflation. So you have to divide this into 3 parts. So पहले आपको 5 marks के लिए you have to highlight the differences between the demand pull and cost push inflation. इसके बाद you have to individually talk about the causes and the impact of both demand pull and cost push inflation. So uske liye you have 10 marks and the last one is suggesting some measures. So what can be done? So ये सब problem है. So inflation होने से what can be done? Suggesting some measures to control the inflation. So that is you are suggesting some measures. So that is up to you. You can suggest the measures, but again it should be logical, right? It should be logical and it should make sense. So that is your measures only. You can give your own measures, but of course we have learnt about different measures to overcome the inflation. You can talk about those measures and you can add, suggest if at all you have any unique and feasible measure, right? So that is for 5 marks, correct? So ये हो गया section A, section B, section C. So from this, what are we learning? We are learning answer writing is important, right? How do you come up with the answer writing? So what are the points you need to be remembering? Introduction and conclusion. Introduction or conclusion are very, very important. Time limit, word limit are equally important. interlinking the topics. So wherever, whenever it's required, interlinking the current affairs or maybe the different parts. So whenever you're talking about money and banking, so that can also be monetary policy and all that you learn in the money and banking. But when it comes to international, right, when you're talking about balance of payments, you are linking them. So आपका expenditure reducing policies क्या है? Expenditure reducing policies are nothing but your monetary and fiscal policies, है ना? So you're linking them. So wherever it's possible, interlinking the topics and giving the answer, right? Ensuring that your answer is unique. So I'll tell you one thing, all those people who had given the exam who are planning for the upcoming years, remember all of you are going to put that effort, right? Everybody is going to learn. आप सबको पता है what is cost push inflation, what is demand pull inflation, right? You know all the topics, but what makes you different? What makes you different is giving your answer, right? Ensuring that your answer is unique, right? Ensuring that your answer is unique. So everybody would be able to write the concept, but what makes you unique is how well you give the answer, how well you present the answer, right? How well you articulate whatever you are learning and trying to interlink with the topics and also keeping it precise, giving a proper introduction, conclusion, ensuring the time limit, ensuring the word limit, right? That's what makes your answer unique, right? And this uniqueness, बाकी whatever we have discussed, this will not come overnight. So इसके लिए बहुत सारे रिविजन करना पड़ेगा, प्रैक्टिस करना पड़ेगा आपको, नोट्स के बारे में you have to be focusing on. So whenever you are making notes, right? So for example in Ecoholics we have this live sessions, we keep telling so ये सब important है, इसको concentrate करना. So you can come up with mind maps so that you remember them easily. It's easier for you to revise. Correct? So notes and practicing answer writing every day. I would always tell my students who comes for mentorship calls, even if you're taking up one answer, that's fine. Practice it on a daily basis. कुछ भी, take a particular topic, you learn about it, take a particular question and then answer. Dedicate 15 minutes or 20 minutes. So 15 to 20 minutes is not a huge thing on your daily schedule. You can dedicate. So practice the answer writing. So when you do this, obviously you will be able to ensure that uniqueness comes and you can easily clear the paper, right? So revision practice is very important. And also if you take Ecoholics, students, you write the weekly test and also test series ये सब है. So we give feedback. So there is a timely feedback given. So when there is an improvement seen, that improvement is definitely appreciated and you are asked to put efforts on other parts as well. So the feedback is very important because the feedback will help you to guide, right? Will help you to go in a proper path and it will also motivate you. जब आप correct कर रहे हैं, that motivation is important, right? So keeping yourself motivated is the most important aspect. So it is a long journey. We will not be doing it in just a day or two. So it's going to be a year of effort. So for the entire year, if you're going to put all these efforts, you should be staying motivated. That comes first. So staying motivated, staying healthy, right? That is very, very important. And this would help you to do all the other things. So everything else will fall into the place and you can clear the exam definitely. Okay, so that's about it. I guess I've covered about the answer writing and also about the GE2. Hope you had liked the session. So if you had liked the session, please give a thumbs up and then you can also contact to our team if you are interested to enroll yourself for the upcoming batches, right, for the IES. And please do share it to your friends if your friends had missed anything of this particular session, so which is going to be useful for all of you. Yes, so that's my time. So it's one, and yes, I pretty much finished the same. So any doubts? So if you have any doubts, you can put it in the live chat. Yes, thank you. Okay, regarding the cutoff, so I would suggest you to always aim for about 40% to 50%, right? So 40% is something that you can aim at. So that will always keep you in a safe place. So if you are able to get something more than 45%, then yes, 45% of the whole marks for all the papers put together, consistently maintaining all the cutoffs. I mean, consistently maintaining more than 45% and aiming at 50% is definitely a great thing. Yes, और कुछ है? Okay then. So have a great day ahead. Yes. So if you are preparing, if you are taking up the upcoming year, please do put your best efforts. Yes. And if you need any help, so you can definitely contact to our team. So you can see different batches, you can enroll yourself into one so that it's going to be definitely a great experience for you. Yes. So you can contact the team. So there is going to be a number that's going to be on the screen right now. So you can definitely check.